Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with another great episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. And I've got a couple of great guests today. I've got Zach and Rod. So Zach Smith and Rod McDermott, they are from a company called Activate 180. And we're going to talk about how do you be the employer of choice? Now, the employer of choice doesn't necessarily even mean you want to employ people in your company. It could be how do you work with outsourced people as well? Attract them to your business and build relationships with them, hopefully for life, so that they become proponents of your business, whether they're an employee internally or they're a vendor, if you will, externally, but they're promoting and going above and beyond for your client base. And how do you retain these people in an era where people are looking now more for quality of life than they ever have been in the past? They're looking for experiences. They're looking for life harmony, right? And we've got, the millennials and the generation coming up after that, really going to be the forerunners in the world. And we have a lot of the baby boomers and we have a lot of the traditionalists and other groups that are looking at this group going, or these groups going, how do I actually serve these people? And how do I get this to the next level? Utilizing their talents, labor, and their strengths for my particular business. And I want to build businesses long-term, and I want to build relationships long-term. So that's what our podcast is about here today, our interview. So let's go to Zach and Rod right now. Zach and Rod, thanks for being on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I'm really grateful you both are here.
Doug, thanks for having us. We're excited.
Yeah, great to be here, Doug. Thank you.
I really appreciate you guys being here because it's such a wonderful subject matter that we're going to talk about today, and I have a challenge for everybody listening. Here's the challenge. Are you the employer of choice? And we're going to talk a lot about that today. These two gentlemen on the line have a lot of experience from, recruiting executive CEOs to coaching them and in all kinds of disciplines. And so, guys, I want to go right to it if we can. Why is it important now more than ever? Because it always was important, I think, but why is it more important now than ever to actually be the employer of choice?
Yeah, I'll dive in real quick, and Zach, I'll leave you a little bit of room on this. But, Doug, I think that companies have to start looking at the whole person when they're looking to recruit somebody and say, what is it that we're offering to them? Because in the past, it was, career path opportunities, it was financial opportunities. Sometimes it was, a little bit of benefits, and you have companies that would say, oh, we do unlimited vacation. Wow, that's cool. I like that. And, that's all becoming kind of passe now. And now the next iteration of this is saying, we get that you spend most of your waking hours with us, and we're here to help you live your best life. And we know that when you're at your best, you'll be at your best for us too. You'll be a best coworker. You'll be a best boss, you'll be a best subordinate, whatever, and you'll be in the best frame of mind for us to develop you. And how do we grow our company? We grow our people. I mean, you think about it, right? Apple, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak started in Steve Jobs' garage and became the most valuable company on the planet, 40, 50 years later. Why? Because they took people that had great talent and continued to move them ahead. As they move ahead, the company moves ahead. Same thing with Google, right? So you have to look at your people not just as a means to an end, but almost flip that. We, the company, are a means to your end of trying to help you live your best life. And if you do that, and you bring that to us, we're going to hit our goals.
Yeah. Well said, Rod. And I think that is really what it comes down to, is if you take care of your people, they'll take care of your business, because they'll be more engaged. They'll feel supported. And when people feel supported and they feel taken care of, they're going to show up in a bigger way. They're going to go that extra mile. And so that really is why in our approach, in our coaching approach, we really look at this 5-pillar model when working with people, not just supporting them in their career. So, gone are the days, I think, where you can just support the worker. As Rod was talking about, it's supporting the whole human, the whole individual, and helping them thrive in their lives. And so we use this 5-pillar model. And we focus on career, but we also focus on relationships, both within the organization as well as in their personal lives. The other pillars are life experiences, health and wellness. So building lifestyle habits that support them in optimizing energy, managing stress levels, and then lastly, finances. Because the reason that we do this, and it's actually supported by a lot of great data from Gallup, it shows that if people are operating at a high level in each of these 5 areas, they're much more likely to feel fulfilled in their career. They're much more likely to feel connected to the organization. And as well as if they're at a 7 or above in each of those areas in a personal rating, they're actually half as likely to turn over as an employee as well, because their lives are working well. And I think what happens for people is, if they're only focused on career and aren't having a well-balanced and living with intention, then things start to fall apart in their life. They're having a sacrificial conversation because they feel like they need to pull from one to give to the other. But if the company supports them in living that well-rounded life, they don't feel like they're missing out on anything, and they can show up fully engaged, supported, and at their unlocked potential for the employer. And I think that is what really helps people feel connected and weaved in to what the company cares about, is by feeling taken care of themselves. It's the give and take. It's the energetic exchange that I think really creates that.
There's so much here that you guys have I'm going to try to unpack a little bit of this. I mean, firstly, we all know that cost of turnover is exorbitantly expensive in a business. People get it intellectually. I don't think they still practice it across the board, right? But, but and I think what you said was a means to an end, right? I mean, if you take care of your people, they will take care of your business. And all employers tend to want that, but they don't embrace what you guys are talking about. And I think they've been forced to now, which I'd love to delve into in a second. But when you guys were speaking, it reminded me of a story of something I read on the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas. Now, whether people like Steve Wynn or they don't, this story kind of embodies what I think you guys are saying. So a guest comes to the hotel, to the casino, and the wife forgot her needed medication. It was a critical medication that she needed for her health. And so one of the employees took it upon himself to actually drive almost 2 hours one way, pick her prescription up, and bring it back to the hotel for her. Now, it wasn't a requirement for this young man to do it. He just did it. And so I feel, and I would love to get your input on this, when people are working, whether they're employees or even partners, and people in the company, when they're treated in a manner in which they feel valued and respected, they will go above and beyond. And who wins not only is the company, but the customer itself. And then the customer is now so happy, they start making referrals, or you end up in an article that, some guy, 3,000 miles away, reads and goes, geez, maybe next time I go to Vegas, I'll stay at the Wynn Hotel. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm being a CEO myself. I'm a student of a lot of those kinds of stories, and I've read stories about Southwest Airlines, and the same kind of thing. They empower their people to solve problems, right? Just solve the problem, get it done, and make sure the customer is happy. And so I'm a huge believer in that. And the reverse is also true, right? If the company says, "Listen, this is what we want you to do. Just do this." And stay in this box here, and they don't look at the whole human, they just look at the person as kind of, to my point before, a means to an end, then those people will, that's when they adopt the attitude, well, that's not my job. Yeah, this lady left her prescription, that's not my job, and then you end up with a company that's like that. And over time, from a service level, you're going to be beat out by your competitors, if that's the level, if that's the game that you're playing. If you're playing a price game, yeah, you can play that game all day long, just got to be the cheapest price. So it depends on what part of the market you're trying to hit. At the end of the day, though, we believe, like you believe, turnover is really, really expensive. I mean, the cost of a new employee is generally double. In my business, it's double the first year, and it's 1.5 times the second year of what an existing employee, which means we can pay that person way more to keep them, and we're still doing better than if we have to replace them,
right?
Because of their productivity. My business, their best productivity starts in year 3. So if we lose people in less than 3 years, we're losing them at their best, right before their best. We can't afford to do that.
Yeah. And I think adding to that, what you're talking about, Doug, is what I see as an impact player when you say that, right? Somebody that's willing to say, I'm going to do this not because it's my job, because it needs to get done for the good of the company, for this individual that is a client of ours, and then we can go above and beyond for. And those are the type of people, the impact players, you might also refer to that as a culture influencer, the type of person that shows up big, that's encouraging other people, that cultivates energy amongst the company. And those people have options. They have a lot of people coming after them. And so at the end of the day, if you're not giving them room to be able to show up, to take that, because you could consider that a risk, right? Of them, taking the initiative to say, I'm going to go do this because I know it's the right thing to do. And so I think organizations giving people that autonomy to be able to go out and make those decisions for the good of the company, that creates synergy, right? To know that, okay, this is how we operate. We care for the greater good. We care for our people, and we put them first. And so knowing that, to me, that means that they've aligned on what the guiding principles are, what their true north is, and they're able to follow that. And I think, and Daniel Pink does some great work around this, around motivation too. And what he says there's 3 main elements of motivation, and that is autonomy, purpose, and mastery. So the ability to master your craft. And so if you're giving people space to be able to accomplish those things, you're going to get more out of them. They're going to have the natural intrinsic energy to go that extra mile. And I think that's what you're really achieving there. And if people have that, they're not going to be looking elsewhere. But you need to, I think employers need to be able to create that support for the impact players, for those people to really want to stay and be engaged fully.
Hey, Doug, I want to make one other quick point on this. There's a company that I know fairly well that's the leader in their space globally. They're about a $12 billion business. And the founders have a saying, and it's, this first got published back in the 90s, right? That they said this. So it was really kind of revolutionary back then, right? We all grew up as, the customer comes first, right? Take care of the customer. They said, customer doesn't make our list. We have only 2 entities on our list. Our employees come first. Our vendors come second. If we take care of our employees and our vendors, they'll take care of the customers. And because these people, these founders had this philosophy, they've literally grown their business into the largest in the world in their space. And it's a $12 billion company. And it's very, very unique. I've tried to recruit people out of that company. It's really hard to do. It's really hard. And they're a private company. But they take care of their people with, internal equity kind of grants. And it's phantom equity. It's owned by these 2 individuals. But they really are renowned for taking care of the people. They definitely, walk the talk.
What I love about what you guys are talking about is everything that you're saying really comes down to, and I'll give Tony Robbins credit on this because he came out with, the basic human needs, right? And so, if we look at like growth, contribution, significance, love, connection, all of these human needs, what I'm hearing is the shift has happened where people are not looking for just money or financial gains any longer. I mean, it's part of security, which is also a need for a lot of people. However, but that's not the driving force or the only force today. It's all the other human needs that are coming together in which people are looking at life, especially after now we've shifted a bit off, the pandemic, now the Ukraine and Russia conflict and the escalating, prices and everything that's been going on with gasoline being, $6 a gallon or, plus. I think what people are really going for now is just, what's my quality of life going to be like when I'm here now? And how can I be stable in an organization that is going to take care of all of this for me, and I'll take care of all of that for them? Do you guys agree or disagree with that?
No, I agree. I mean, I think we boil it down to, and this is really kind of Zach's teachings, there's one word I call fulfillment, right? And we call fulfillment. And there's a whole lot of ways to get fulfillment. But if I can get fulfillment from my company, and if I can rank my fulfillment a 9 or 10 out of 10, and some of that is I'm getting compensated fairly, I'm getting developed fairly, my company cares about my well-being, not just at work, but at home. They're helping me live my best life. All these things kind of dive into this one big area. Then I think that's the grading scale that employees are using, right? Beyond that, and we all complained for a long time about the millennials and the Gen Zs, and I'm like the last year of the baby boomer, right? So we've been looking at this generation. They didn't want to work. They didn't want to do this. Well, the reality is they wanted fulfillment. They wanted to be able to go take a hike on a Friday afternoon and then come back and clean up their emails and do stuff. They don't want to be stuck in an office necessarily doing that. So they want to look at their career as having a portfolio of experiences that allow them to have a personal life and a professional life. They still want to move ahead. They're still driven. They want to take great trips to Europe. They want to do fun things. They want to have life experiences, but they want, and it's not just work-life balance. I think it's Zach, you say it best. I'm not going to steal it from you. What's your quote? It's not work-life balance. It's
about work-life harmony.
Yeah. They work together.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what it's about is the game has changed. And what I really saw happen when the pandemic really took hold was, people were moving on this cycle. And I think everyone's cage got shook a bit, and it caused a reevaluation because people got out of this really rapid pace of going and working towards something that, as they got a chance to evaluate, maybe realized that was not actually really what was of highest priority to them, of highest value to them. And so I think it's that. I think that's, in some of the older generations, I think the younger generation is already starting to realize this, that maybe that veil has been lifted of, oh, if I just achieve enough and I make enough money, then I'll have happiness and I'll feel fulfilled. And I think that's really changing. And to me, that's evident in also some great research that's been done. Actually, Harvard Business Review released a stat that I thought was staggering. What it said was that fulfillment was the reason that 9 out of 10 people would be willing to leave their job for less money. So that is an indicator of, yes, as Rod was talking about, these things are still important to be able to support yourself and support the life experiences that you want to have, and to be able to support yourself financially is still important, but it's about getting a fair wage and being treated fairly. That was actually what was found in some great research that was also done by MIT Sloan around the Great Resignation. And they found that, well, I think the initial interpretation was that a lot of it was because of compensation, and that's why people were leaving. They actually found that on the list of reasons that people were leaving, compensation was number 16. There were 15 things ahead of why people were resigning from their roles, ahead of compensation, if they felt like they were being treated fairly. And number 1 was a toxic corporate culture. So people feeling like they were disrespected, not treated fairly, if diversity, equity, and inclusion were not incorporated into the organization. So there was a lot of different components that led to this. But what they found was, if people are able to have fulfillment, if they're able to feel purposeful in what they're doing, that is a currency. And it's one that's really valuable, especially to the upcoming generations. And so companies that are paying attention to it are going to be able to get and retain great talent. And those that aren't willing to change, they're going to struggle.
I think that's well said. We're speaking with Zach Smith and Rod McDermott of Activate 180 is the company name, folks. And you're going to get a chance to get some exposure to that in just a moment. I think we're really hitting a crucial point, especially because, Rod, you mentioned you're at the end of the baby boomers. I am too, right? And Zach, I'm going to assume you're not 29 anymore either, right? So, a lot of times when companies come, and come to me and they go, "Hey, I want to hire elite sales performers." My first question to them is, "Are you an A-player company?" Right? Because they don't think about that. But what I've found, and again, I'd love your input on this, guys, is because a lot of companies are still run by baby boomers or even traditionalists, the next generation up. they look at millennials and the new generation coming up as they don't understand it. Like it's like kind of counter, like it fries their brain a little bit to think that, well, what do you mean they want experiences and they want harmony and all of this? And I think it's one of the situations that this is something that people can capitalize on if they embrace it, because it's not a question of, is this going to happen? It's already happened and continuing to happen. And then those generations will take on, and I'm sure that their grandchildren and great grandchildren will come along and throw them a curveball too. But you guys find that maybe, like I do in the companies that I have helped, and it's kind of universal, not 100%, but it's out there, where a lot of the people, our generation and above, they're really having a hard time embracing this new concept of the new reality, if you will.
I definitely see it. I see it when I talk to a lot of folks, even younger than me, right? I'm 56, and I'll talk to folks that are in their late 40s, and they're like, I'm an old soul. I really, I worked my ass off to get ahead, and I did everything. I paid my dues. My kids were born. I was back at the desk the next day, and I did all this stuff. And now they want to take a month off and do all these things. And so I think there's a certain amount of fighting it, right, versus understanding it. But the other side of the coin, and this is just my personal perspective, is, we as employers changed the rules, right? Back in the, prior to the 1980s, you could work for a company for your whole career. My dad spent 35 years at Merck. They moved him ahead. They developed him. They gave him new experiences. He'd work in this job for 3-4 years. Then they give him something else before he got bored, right? And he had a pension. And he's still, to this day, at 88, living off his pension, right? Pensions are gone. I mean, there's like 12% of the companies out there that offer pensions, and they view employees now as a variable cost, right? Whereas before they viewed them as kind of a fixed cost. We're going to bring you in, we're going to train you. There's very few training programs. This is happening in the banking industry today. This is interesting. I just got off the phone with somebody, a client who's on the board of a bank, $10 billion bank, and they're like, we're having problems finding people at the exact level. I said, that's because they're all the same age as your CEO, who's 66. They're all retiring out, and the training programs are gone because banks are so focused on this quarter's numbers. They don't want to spend money sending their people to training programs. I started at Citibank in the 80s. I went to training every quarter in New York City. They'd put me up in a hotel. They'd bring a Harvard professor down. Training was 6 months at the very beginning. They don't do that anymore, right? So the companies were the ones who changed the rules. They started looking at 90-day, 13 weeks. I got to hit my numbers. I got to deliver to Wall Street. And so I've got to keep my costs in a band here, right? And so we as employees became variable cost. Now all of a sudden the employee is saying, hey, if I'm a variable cost, then I want this side over here too. I want to live my life too. I want all the benefits, not just compensation, time off, benefits. I want to be able to live my best life. Well, we kind of were the ones who started that by saying, well, you want to retire, you better be putting money when you're 401k. That's not my problem. That's your problem, right? So I tell employers today that you can fight the new reality, or you can learn to speak this new language. And if you can speak this new language, you can speak to this new base of employees, and you can pay them in the currencies that they want, and they will pay you in the currency you want, which is growth in revenue and profitability and market share in your business. You can both have it.
Yeah, I think you're right on it, Rod. At the end of the day, it's what I see happen a lot is these conversations are happening of, I don't understand. I feel like we're providing the things that we want. We've got our mission, we've got guiding principles, but these decisions oftentimes are made in a silo at the top. And I think that's where people get sideways. It's just not understanding, but it's hard to understand if you're not listening. So I think the key is to listen, because those younger generations, and I'm actually consider myself a cusp millennial. I am still in the millennial generation, but in the on the latter part of it. And so, I'm kind of in that in between. And so I've got this opportunity to work with all the different generations, but this younger group really wants to feel heard. They want to be a part of the conversation. They want to be a part of something. But if you give them that opportunity, you not only can learn, but you also are going to help them feel like they're making their mark. You're going to weave them into what you're doing. And so I think that is what really is creating the engagement, because right now, 85% of workers are not engaged. And I think it's because they don't feel that level of support. They don't feel that level of engagement with the organization and what they're doing and why it matters. And so you're going to see this huge emergence of companies, I think, really being put into this position where they're going to have to be really transparent about who they are, what they care about, and why they do what they do, and how you can be a part of it. Because I think that, as we're talking about currencies, is going to be a major one. And so, that's one thing that I would say is take the opportunity to listen, because you'll see a massive receptiveness and people will have the opportunity. But if you put that out there, you have to be willing to actually listen and to make some adjustments. But that will up level your engagement to a whole new level, to a whole new place. And then you're also able to really get some great ideas from from people that have their finger on the pulse of where things are going. Because this is, I think sometimes the newer generation gets a bad rap, but I tell you what, they're very talented and they're thinking differently and they're thinking outside the box. They're making their own rules, and that, I think, is where things are going. So listen.
Yeah, I think society said the same thing about the 60s, right?
Yeah.
And now wonder who's running companies now. I mean,
right.
So I love what you said. You got to listen, right? And so, sometimes companies, when I talk to them, they're like, I can't get my marketing to work. I can't get my salespeople aren't resonating with so we look at the messaging and it's like, it's off. And so they go, well, what do I do? Who are you listening to? To listen, one must first ask a question. So go back to your client base, go back to your potential buyers, ask them, what do they want? Then build your marketing around that and it will resonate, right? It's not hard stuff, but a lot of people look at that. And I think what you're saying, Zach and Rod, is so true. It's like they're making these decisions up in some ivory tower somewhere amongst a little boardroom, but they're not asking these people, what do they want? But these people are saying, hey, I'm demanding this. And if I don't get this, I'm not going to work. I'm just not going to do it. And so it's creating all these job shortages around for people. So I can only imagine right now, people listening to this are going, okay, I got the point. All right, what do I do about this? Let's go to the experts, Zach and Rod, with Activate 180. What does the company do about this at this point? I know listen is really cool, but what would be kind of maybe give me a step-by-step game plan to the best of our ability on this call, if so.
Yeah, well, I think it's looking at new levels of support, and that's one of the approaches that we take, is to actually provide a model so that everyone within an organization can have access to a coach, and because traditionally coaching has been done either at the executive level or for people that needed to be fixed or needed to be turned around, and we actually take a very different approach. And so for us, it's being able to provide constant support for people to feel like they're developing personally and professionally, that they're building emotional intelligence levels. So what we're doing within that too is emotional intelligence within yourself, but also with others. And so that coupled with skill building around effective communication, so that people know how to communicate if something feels off. Because if you're not doing that, you're holding on to it, and then you're building resentment. Resentment leads to disconnection. Disconnection leads to, I'm going to look elsewhere for something that feels better. And so instead of getting people holding on to something, you're getting people leaning in. And so that, I think, is the key, is if you're listening, you're also creating psychological safety. You're opening up the conversation for people to take interpersonal risk, to share their ideas, to be bold and innovative, which in turn is going to create further engagement. So I think it's not only just in the listening, it's also in the further engagement of your people. And we do that through coaching and training and development, because people want to feel like they're growing. That's the thing, is people want to feel like they're growing. They want to feel like they're developing. Another thing too, and I referenced this in the article previously from MIT Sloan and the studies that they did, the number one way that they found to build retention was actually in lateral job opportunities. That was the number one way. It wasn't in job promotions, but it was just variance. I think that's also something. So it's variance in new opportunities. It's variance. So we talk about experience, right? Of being, this currency that people want. I think that also applies to people's roles. If you get in this redundant space of doing the same thing, day after day, people's attention spans have diminished, right? They say that we have the average attention span now of a goldfish with with these newer generations. And so if you have people doing the same thing day in and day out and are in a place of redundancy, they probably are going to get disengaged. So I think if you couple growth and development with other opportunities to be able to advance their career, to be able to advance their lives, then you're going to create an open space for people to really feel like they're getting better. And I think that's just a intrinsic human need that people have, is to feel like they're growing.
Yeah, I'll take it from a company perspective, Doug. I think that companies are stretched thin. Most of them want to be employers of choice. They're just not sure how. They like the idea of helping their employees live their best lives. They're just not sure how to do it. And so one of the things that we do, and again, having run an executive search firm for the last 20 plus years and been able to interact with CEOs of small companies all the way up to pretty big companies and kind of hear some of the challenges they're having holding on to their people, recruiting people, and then developing their people for jobs. I mean, oftentimes when we do a search, there's an internal candidate or two that should be ready, but there was no internal development. They do have a learning and development department, and that's usually one leader and a couple of folks, and they run training programs and they put everybody in a training once or twice a year. But that's not real development. Real development is saying, here's some things that we need to work on. Here's some areas that we're going to work on, at least in the career side of things. And then here's the transitions that we want to make, the progression that we want to make, so that you are promotable, so that you're ready for that next opportunity, right? I know this sounds counterintuitive to what I do because, again, our executive search business oftentimes is called because the client says, we got a couple people who want to put their hat in the ring. We don't think they're ready for the job. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, how come you didn't get them ready? What are the things? And I know the reality. The reality is they just don't have the resources, right? You might have 1,000 employees in a human resources department of 15 people. They can't give the other 985 employees coaching and development on an ongoing basis, but we can. And that's what Activate 180 has done. Zach talked about the 85% of folks that at one point or another are disengaged. That's where the 180 comes in. We want to activate these folks and do a 180 on that disengagement and make it 85% of them are engaged, right? And the way they're going to be engaged is because they know their company is moving them ahead and developing them. It's interesting. One of the add-on products that we've developed over the last year and a half or so is spouse and family coaching, because we've had people call us and say, hey, my husband or my wife is really excited about the development that I've had, and they want some of that. Can we get that for them? Can I get them a coach? Because you start seeing people develop in all these areas of their lives. So I think companies have it within their power. They've looked at it in the past, and I'll just share my example. I've had a coach for 21 years, an executive coach, and he's been amazing. He's helped us build a pretty decent sized company. We're now global in our executive search business. And there's no way I could have done it without him. But I also couldn't offer him to everybody in my company on a regular basis. I met with him twice a month for over 20 years. And but I have extra hours, and people say, hey, can I get an hour of his time? And it was usually life-changing to be able to do that. But it was an hour here and an hour there, and I would kind of spread them around to whoever might need him. But I was the only one who got it. Was $500 an hour. It's too much money. I can't afford to do that. So we created a model where it's affordable for companies to offer it to every employee who wants a coach. And it's almost a rounding error on what you pay compensation. It's between 0.75% and 1.5% of the comp of that person. That's not how we bill, but it can literally be as cheap as like $1,500, $125 a month. I mean, that's how cheap it can be, right? So for that level, can I get a return on investment? Absolutely. The ROI is really easy to get to. So that's the solution that I think companies have needed. They just don't have the scale in their L&D departments to be able to offer real development of people on a monthly ongoing basis. And so, I think that's the answer that companies are going to embody. Our space, there's a bunch of companies that have raised a bunch of money, that have scaled fast. The education among what we do now is becoming pretty proliferated on a global basis now. And companies are realizing this is a true, not only employee benefit, it's kind of a baseline offering now to be able to build my people up and develop them into who I need.
So how do people get a hold of you guys? Like if, hey, all right, I get it, coaching. And by the way, I'm going to do a plug for coaching because, I was a coach for many, many, many years. And I took a little experiment. I looked back through the years I had actually coaching, and I took the years I didn't, and I cross compared them and I added all up the numbers. Every year I had coaching, I grew by about an average of 22%.
Wow.
And when I looked at that number, I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I do this for, these years and that year, right? Because when you look at like the myriad of years over the time period, it's huge compounding growth, right? So I don't think coaching is an option for anybody who wants to be an A player or be at the top of their game. We all heard the adage, all these top people always have coaches. They've always had coaches. Why? Because coaching gets us to think on a different level and then act on a different level, make decisions on a different level. But I literally ran the numbers and it was 22% a year. So if anybody's listening to this and going, well, is a coach right for me? Well, okay. Do you want to grow or don't you? You know what I mean? Because we're all in our own. We can always, like, the ride inside the vehicle is always different than somebody outside the vehicle looking at the vehicle. And I remember one day I was driving down the road and somebody was pointing at my car and I was like, well, what do you want? What do you want? I rolled down the window. They go, you got a flat tire starting on the back of the car, right? Well, I didn't know, but they were my coach outside looking in. So I was like, thank goodness. I pulled over to the tire shop. They fixed it. I didn't, get stuck in the hot heat in the middle of the summertime in an area. So people looking for coaching, how do they get a hold of you guys? What's the best route?
Yeah. So you can find us at activate180.com. That's a great way to find us, get a feel for a little bit more of what we do. There's also an opportunity to contact us page on there, as well as I'm more than happy to just drop my email in here because I love hearing from people and we'd love to start the conversation with you. My email is zsmith@activate180.com. Rod, I believe yours is McDermott at activate180.com.
Yep.
So yeah, we'd love to hear from you and start the conversation. There's obviously only so much that we can cover here, but we love talking about this because we really care about cultivating and architecting incredible cultures, and we deeply care about people. That's what this is all about. It's for companies that get that that's their greatest asset. That's who we show up really big for and who we're able to support. So that's how you can find us, Doug.
Hey, Doug, I was going to share something too. It's not quite the same calculation that you did, but over the last 21 years or so, I think we've paid our coach about $1.5 million, but we've done hundreds of millions in business over that period of time. And so, it's literally less than 1%. And I 100% know we wouldn't be where we are today without the coaching that we received. And same with some of our senior folks in our company who received that. And then when we started rolling out Activate 180 internally over the last couple of years in our own company, the growth that we've seen has been astronomical. Last year when people were so busy, I had a handful of folks talk to me and say, I don't know that I could have gotten through the year without my coach. One person said to me, I wouldn't be the husband I am, I wouldn't be the father I am, and I wouldn't be the partner I am to my coworkers if I hadn't had my coach with the amount of business that we processed last year.
It makes a ton of sense. I mean, because we as human beings always look long. We want to look long term, right? We get married. We're supposed to get married for life. We're not thinking, most of us, hey, I think I'll get married in 22 months, I'll redo this, right? Or, in 8 months, I'll just jump out of this and do it again, right? I mean, we want long-term friends. We want friends we've had from, childhood to grow with us and all of this stuff. So it makes sense that we should hold on to employees who want to be there, who are productive. And if we can do, when we're dating or trying to, woo the other partner, we do all kinds of things off those charts. We make calls, we send love letters, we do all kinds of things that maybe aren't appropriate in the business setting, to send a love letter. But the point being is that we do extra special stuff.
Yes.
And we're constantly checking in with our partners to say, hey, are you happy? And when they're not, we're trying to fix the problem. But as employers, they look at this thing as almost, a commodity sometimes. It's like, well, just an expectation. And they're not realizing that this is a person and this person wants to be developed. They want to grow because it's a human, we must, right? Or if, it's not to keep quoting Tony Robbins, but you're either growing or you're dying, right? That type of thing, right? Or sliding back. So what you guys do makes so much sense. And I know from having relationships that were not good, I can look back and look directly at my business and realize, okay, my business didn't grow that well because my relationship was not that good. And my relationship's great. And my business grew by millions and, those type of things. So everything is holistic here. And that's what I love about what you guys do at Activate 180. It's not just like, let's just work on this one piece of the business and forget about all that other stuff, because that's not going to necessarily filter into the business when it is the business, because it is the person that you're actually dealing with. Well, gentlemen, this has been an outstanding interview. I know people got great value of this. I really appreciate you guys being here. Anything on this that maybe, hey, Doug, I know we can't cover everything, but maybe I should have asked you that you guys were hoping, well, I hope he asked this question, or did I do a good job and we're good to go?
Doug, I think you did a great job. And actually, one piece that I felt myself wanting to add when we were talking about how do you create this environment and how do you support your people? The one other piece that I wanted to add is support your leaders. Support your leaders, because they're the people that are engaging with your people day in and day out, and make sure that they have systems for performance management, for supporting their people in growth. Because what I find is if you can get managers out of this place of needing to fix and be the answer to everything, but really teach how to empower people and help them find their answers and coach their people also, then you're creating an environment, you're creating a coaching culture where you are preparing people for that next level. So that's one more piece that I did want to add, because I think it's so important, is make sure that your leaders are effective and have the support that they need. Because I think you're a manager by title and you're a leader by how you show up for your people. Mm-hmm. And so that, I think, is ultimately the key. So, but Doug, thank you so much. I really love being here. Love this conversation. I could talk with you about this stuff all day long. We absolutely love it. So thank you for all the work you're doing.
I appreciate it, Zach.
Yeah, Doug, this has been a lot of fun. The only thing I would add also is that, I think if employers are having a hard time saying, can we actually adopt this kind of mentality? I mean, we've been around for 10, 20, 30 years, and we have this kind of culture that's set and ingrained. Look back to March of 2020 when things shut down. And I can't tell you, including how many companies I know, including my own company, if you were to ask me, could I work out of this home office for a year plus and get things done? I would have said, not a chance. I can't do it. Well, I learned I could. And not only that I could actually do well and prosper and have a little more balance. I usually start my day here and end my day here, and I'll go up to the office, which is 20 minutes away, outside of traffic hours, get some phone calls done on the way, but no longer am I competing with, a million other cars on the road or doing any of that stuff. And I walk, 100 feet that way, and I get to have dinner with my family at 6:30 at night. And that's kind of cool. So I'm actually more productive, but I wouldn't have been able to buy into this had we not had a pandemic. So sometimes, we're forced by necessity into being open-minded. I think that that's happening now when you see the movement of employees and the velocity that's been taking place over the last couple of years. They're voting with their feet to go to organizations that they feel are aligned with the life they want to live. You can be that organization. And there's no way that you can, you can do this, trust me, but there's going to be a little bit of a training, and it's going to be a little uncomfortable. It's going to be a little different, but you can get through it. And at the other side, you're going to find, wow, we're better for it. You might actually enjoy your life better.
Yeah, I firmly agree with this. As you guys are saying this, a story popped into my head. I used to be a DJ. Professional DJ. And so I'd be a mobile DJ most of the time, and I would go do corporate events and thousands of weddings. And I would do, every once in a while, I would do these long-term marital anniversaries, 40-year, 50-year, 55, 60-year anniversaries. And I would notice the people, would be really happy with one another, and they still look like they were teenagers in love and all of this stuff. And many of them had actually built businesses together. So I would go up and ask them, because I was so curious. I was like, hey, what's kind of the secret here? And the woman would always say the same thing. You listen to each other, you take care of one another, you empower one another, which I think is what you said, Zach, right? Then I would ask the guy, well, what do you think? He goes, someone has to be the leader. And he said, and you always listen to her, right? You ask questions and understand one fundamental. She's always right. And it used to make, and then he'd kind of, laugh a little bit. And the guy, it was almost verbatim through all of these people who had long, successful relationships. They were looking for long-term gain and benefit from one another, and they would coach each other through life.
Yes.
And I know my wife does that for me. It's like, she'll say to me sometimes, because we have daughters, you're thinking like a man. And I'm like, well, okay, well, how do I not think like a man, right? Because I am a man. And she'd be like, this is how perspective on how a woman thinks, right? That allows me to change my thinking to communicate better with my daughters. And so anybody who's questioning, oh, is coaching for me or coaching not for me? I'm really pushing hard on this podcast for people that contact you guys, because I know what it brings on the other side. So folks, we'll put everything into the show notes. You'll have all the contact information. Reach out to these guys. They are the real deal. So gentlemen, once again, thanks for being here on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I want to have you back if you'll come back.
Thanks, Doug. It's a pleasure.
Hey, everyone. Wasn't that a great episode? What is it like? It made probably you think about, long-term versus short-term, commodity of an employee or an outsourced vendor. And, having that as a working integral part of the business, we all want that. We all want long-term relationships. We all want people who care. We all want people who proactively build our businesses. But, how do you do that? How do you reduce the turnover of that? Because it's expensive, whether it's internal, external. A lot of people think, well, I have a vendor out there, it's an external vendor. I'm not paying them as base salary. I'm not paying them all that stuff. But, when you turn them over, now you've got to find a new one. And sometimes finding the new one, it doesn't always go that well. So the questions that were being asked are, are you set up as an A-player company to attract A-player talent to you, are very important. And how do you deal with the generations coming up if you're an older generation, or if you're even in that generation? How do you embrace what's going on and be able to do that profitably, and be able to have people and build people and grow people and give them their own human needs that they're looking for, as well as provide them a pathway to live a life working with you, not just for you. So hope you got a lot out of this episode. Check out Activate 180. Rod and Zach are both very professional guys. I've had several conversations with them, and give them a look. And of course, if you want anything or need anything from a particular podcast episode that you want me to do, let me know what that is. Send me an email at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com or dougbrown1234 and that's my LinkedIn address. And let me know what you want for subject matter. We'll source talent and we'll bring this subject matter to you, because we're here for you, our listeners. Speaking of being a listener, if you would, tell other people about this, bring them forth, have them subscribe to the podcast. If you haven't, please do so yourself. And if you love this podcast, please give it a glowing review. The more reviews, the more subscribers, the higher the algorithms, if you will be in my favor, the company's favor, to bring this podcast up so we can continue to keep bringing you great talent. And of course, if you want to build your business, you want to talk about sales, you want to talk about how to get into the top 1% of sales globally, you want to hire, train, manage, and retain top elite performers, those A-player salespeople, reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. Give a call to the company at 603-595-0303 or hit me up on LinkedIn at dougbrown1234. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Go out, sell some stuff, sell it profitably, sell a lot of it, be happy, and live your life to its fullest capacity, to your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit ceosalesstrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.